Welcome to TFC Talks, the podcast where we talk about mental health and we give you the strategies and tools to help you live a balanced and fulfilling life. I'm Amanda Davison, a licensed marriage and family therapist and CEO of The Family Connection. And I have with me here today Elizabeth, also known as Liz, you're going to hear me call her that today, Lopez. She is a clinical therapist at our Family Connection office in Las Lunas, soon to be independently licensed. So excited. And today we're going to really spend some time talking about what it is to live a balanced life and how do we use the power of routines to help us come to that balance. We're going to give you some tools and some strategies in the importance of establishing and maintaining those routines so that way you have a better sense of overall being. So welcome, Liz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really love about you just as a clinician and a person is that you naturally just enter every room with just such a sense of like balance and peace. I've recognized that from you from day one, and I've watched you grow in that and watched you excel. And so when this topic came up about balance and routine, you stood out to me because this is something you do so naturally, and I watch you as a clinician talk with your clients about these strategies. So tell us a little bit about why routines matter.
I had the opportunity and challenge to work at an HIV/AIDS agency in Roswell. It feels like 100 years ago, right before the drug cocktails came in. And one of the guys I worked with, who actually started the agency, had his 3 T cells that he would name, and we got together one time because he liked to play guitar and he knew I liked to play guitar, and we all got together and brought songs and maracas and drums and just sang, and we did it every 6 weeks or so, and it was one of the best experiences, especially in terms of working in that kind of work, because you're consumed by it. And I'd always been involved in music. It's always been an important part of my life, but to use it as a way to help balance me, that was the first time, and it's stuck. It's become very important. So you have to, you got to strategize about how you do it. Life has a lot of demands, and you have to make a decision about what it is you need to do and how to do it, and not be so rigid in it, but not be so loose that all of a sudden you wind up you're not taking care of yourself or not being as balanced.
I love it. There were several things that you brought up. One is just your heart. I think your heart has always been in health and mental health and in the community, and just how much wisdom and expertise you bring to us in that, and just so excited to see that and so excited to feel that energy from you and the healing. The other piece I hear when you bring up the story from Roswell, and you are an incredibly talented musician. I've had the privilege of getting to watch you, and truly totally talented. And one of the things I hear in that too is that it's almost like you're balancing a right brain, left brain.
Yeah.
Right? So right brain is, for our audience who may not know the right brain, left brain, tell them what that might be.
Well, right brain is our more academic side, and the left brain is our more art side. That's how I explain it.
I love it. Yeah. Right brain is that like logical, very like task focused. If you're going to be doing a math problem, you're going to probably be on your right brain, right? You're sending an email, probably going to be in that right brain hemisphere. Our left brain tends to be a lot more of that artistic, fluid, emotional responses, all of those emotional intelligence pieces. And so what I hear you saying is kind of what research supports, right? Having a balanced view of both the right brain and the left brain, and the ability to interlock those two and move between them and create those neural pathways actually creates the most health. And so when I hear you speak of that story in Roswell, what I hear from both a lived experience place and also a very like neurological place is that you were balancing and creating this dialogue between your right brain and your left brain.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That brought some healing, not only to you, but to everybody that was part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And a lot of research is showing that, how important it is to be able to use both sides of the brain. Some of us lean more toward the more logical, some of us, lean more toward the emotional, and to have that way to access something that's not as familiar to us is so important.
Yeah, I love that idea of like this balance between these two different aspects of ourselves and being able to explore that, and then, recognizing our tendencies. And I hear you even talking a little bit about counterbalancing some of those tendencies, right? And so when we talk about the other piece I wanted to kind of bring up in your story is you talked about the balance, but you also talked about the need to kind of have both structure and fluidity.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
To not be either or. Speak to that a little bit so we can learn from you.
I think that I'm not sure I'm going to get exactly what you're saying, but that I have a part of me that's very structured in a very chaotic sort of way. And there are things that I love to work on my Excel because it organizes for me and it makes me very happy.
Excel makes me happy too.
Happy place, yeah.
My left brain lights up on Excel.
Yeah, it does.
Or my right brain,
The
wrong
right
side.
brain, yeah. Yeah. And so I like that. But if I don't do something to enable the other side, like yoga, it was amazing. I'd been wanting to, I've done yoga on and off, and I'm not really fluid in yoga. It's more the hippopotamus sort of feel when you go from one movement to the other. But staying in my body and paying attention to what I'm doing, there's something about that sets my day. And I don't always realize it until I haven't done it in a few days. So I think that's what you're talking about. I mean, I can just tell when that is not accessed like it should be. And the same with music for me. Music's very communal for me. And yoga is not. It's very alone. But both of them touch that place in me.
And what I hear you saying is there's these traits or these behaviors or these patterns that you've kind of established in your life that help you stay healthy, both from a community place and an individual place, that you may not notice the first day that you're off, but by the third day, you really notice that you're outside of those patterns that have created health and healing for you.
It's not as balanced, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely not as balanced. So what are some of those things people might be thinking about, some of those routines that might come in?
For some people, it's going to the gym. For some people, it's doing sports. For some people, I'm thinking of all the exercise ones right now, but walking. It might be going swimming. It could be visiting with friends. It really is anything that puts us into some, incorporates our senses in some sort of way. And the more we can do that, the more that activity is going to be really, really helpful for us.
I love that. I think that you're talking a lot about the physical activities, right? That activity of like being involved in walking or in swimming or exercise or yoga, some of them community-based, some of them internal, but that importance of really just taking care of ourselves and finding a way to get our body moving is really healthy and really important part of keeping balance.
Yeah, it really, really is. And we talk about it, you hear it all the time, but we have a hard time prioritizing that because we've got to get this done. We got this deadline to do. We have this, this thing. And yet, when we take the time, it doesn't have to be that long. I mean, sometimes it's a 7-minute yoga morning, you know. But as long as we do that, it's amazing how much space it creates for us to do the other stuff that we have to do.
It's kind of that analogy, if you've ever seen it, where you put a whole bunch of small rocks in a bowl, right?
Yeah.
And with big balls or big rocks, right? And then you put the water in and not everything fits.
Right.
But when you put them in the right order, right, then you see how everything ends up fitting.
Yeah,
and so
good.
routine is about having that right order.
Yeah.
So then it allows all of the other things to fit in the cracks and the grooves to give us the best day and the best health.
Yeah. And puts us in a better space, too, to do those other right brain activities.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I was just reading some new research on walking and how they're tying walking to bilateral stimulation. And the same thing with swimming, right? Because you're tending to use both sides of your body at the same time. And that way, what it's doing is it's creating that interface or that exchange between both sides of your brain and stimulating it, allowing us to kind of wake up and be in a better place of balance and health to step into a more full life.
Yeah.
So when we think about routines, one of the other things I love about Liz is that Liz is known, for many of you guys who don't know this, our team in Las Lunas would absolutely know this. Liz is known for being the first person in the office every day. She sets that routine like it is something like you can set your clock to it. Tell me a little bit about how keeping that schedule helps give you balance.
It's my time to myself. I'm introverted at heart, and I need the silence to help me. And I love talking to people when they come in. I love saying hi to everyone. But once that happens, then I start to lose, stuff I could be doing. And they're both important. So it's worth it to me to come in earlier so I can, and plus I work better in the morning.
Me too.
Just once the day's over, I'm like, I can't finish it. I'm done. So I'm all about getting up early and getting it done, and then being available when people start coming in to come in and say hi. And
so I hear a couple things. I hear there's things where you know yourself, right? You know your tendencies. You know that you're more of an introvert. You need some of that quiet time. You also know that when somebody comes in and you have a task to do, you feel pulled, right? That can be one of those challenges in keeping a routine. So you set yourself up with a routine that allows you to have both without feeling torn or feeling like you're not able to keep either obligation that you have to people or to functionally get some of the things done that you need to.
And it doesn't always work out right, but it's okay.
How do you navigate those challenges? Because I think that like when we're listening to these things, we're like, sounds good. I should walk, should absolutely eat a healthy, balanced diet with all of the greens, or I could have some mac and cheese. Or I'll just eat another granola bar for lunch. It's fine. But how do you do that when challenges come in play? Like, how do you keep that routine?
You don't always keep the routine. You have to balance what you do and what may be more important. Last spring I was involved in a chorus, and it just took up one night, but I took advantage of that day and did my walking then right before, but it takes me away from the house, so that part doesn't feel good. But that means that I know I need to then, when I'm home, at least try to be present. I'm not sure that everybody would agree that I'm doing that, but I'm trying to be present. Since I've had my time, then I can be there for the people in my family, and know that sometimes I'm going to have to change the priorities. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to go to choir practice. I need to stay home and do that. And it's not black or white, you just, The thing is, the more you are able to be in the present moment, the more relaxed you are to make those decisions, and usually wind up to be the right decision. When you're panicked, and I grew up panicked, I knew it was hard for me to make decisions. Why it's so important to me not to be panicked. I'm a little bit like a duck, on the outside, I look fine, and on the inside, my little feet are going like this.
Your feet are just going. Yeah. And so I hear a couple things in that. I hear that like piece of like know yourself to lead yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, hey, I know my tendency. I know my tendency is that I really need to be filled up first to be able to kind of pour out that age-old, put your oxygen mask on first, right? Before you put it on somebody else. So I hear you naturally kind of speak about how you've learned those lessons because you're like, hey, I've lived with a lot of anxiety. And I think one of the things that anxiety does that a lot of people don't always realize is it literally sucks the air out of us.
Yeah.
And it gives us less capacity to see choices.
Yeah, and it takes a long-term effect on us more and more. Well, the ACEs study, right? And, all the studies after that have shown the correlation between stress and...
Yeah, ACEs, heart rate, blood pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, any of the things that we want to talk about are going to say anxiety is directly tied to all of those things. And when we live at that level of pace... consistently, like we're living outside of our design, right? Because our design is kind of like the car. When you start going and you're running it all the way in the red all the time, your engine's up a little bit too high.
Yeah.
And so a couple other things that you've said in there, and I just want to point out that wisdom, because sometimes you give such rich wisdom in one nugget that I want to unpack it just a little bit for everybody else. Is you talked about kind of the knowing yourself, but the other thing that you really talked about is you talked about lived history.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how lived history might impact the way that we show up to our experience of routines.
Well, if you're paying attention to your lived history, it can give you clues later on in life. And I've spent a lot of time, I don't always recognize my emotions for sure, but I will recognize what's happening in my body. And that really gives me a clue as to what's going on. So I'll have a feeling in my stomach that says, okay, I'm angry about this, but this is more than what's going on there. So in terms of lived experience, that really has helped more than anything else, is recognizing what's happening in my body. And sometimes I may not always know what's going on, but just to know that, and that's okay. I don't know.
So there's a couple things there. One is I hear you saying you're checking in with yourself and you're asking yourself okay, what am I feeling and where am I feeling it?
Yeah.
And that gives you some really helpful information that I think a lot of our viewers can learn and listen to, is just being able to ask yourself those seemingly simple but not easy questions of what am I feeling and where am I feeling it?
Yeah. And the other thing I do a lot, and I talk to my clients about it too, is I will name how old I feel. And that's one of the best things I can do. So I'll be angry and I'll slam the door and get in my car and go, okay, Liz, how old are you feeling right now? And all right, a 3-year-old tantrum, okay. And that makes me laugh, and it takes the air out of what's going on, and then I can do my readjustment. And so those things help a lot also.
And so part of that lived experience, even in that okay, I'm naming it, I feel this old, right?
Yeah.
I might feel 3, helps you go, oh yeah, these are the times that maybe in my lived experience, I didn't feel like I was heard.
Yeah,
and so the only way I got heard was to slam a door.
Yeah.
Right?
Temper tantrum.
Have a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
And that's changed. And so I can show up differently, not because somebody else is different, but because I'm different.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're 3 years old, you don't know how to process that, so you're doing it the way you know how to do it. And hopefully as we get older, we're better about going, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I can deal with it this way. And that's balanced also. It is that emotion, that we recognize, but then to translate that into a way that I can communicate what's going on for me. And, if it's an argument I'm having or a situation, that's part of the balance for me too.
Yeah, so creating that balance, what I hear you saying is you check in with it,
Yeah.
right? But it doesn't necessarily drive the car for you.
Right, exactly.
Right? You're like, let me see
Yeah.
what's happening for me. Okay, I'm feeling 3, but you're not like, well, 3-year-old, here's the keys.
Yeah.
Like, go do your thing. Like, I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You kind of take that 3-year-old and say, okay, I'm feeling 3.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not 3 in this
Yeah.
situation. How do I step into like my more adult self, like
Yeah.
laugh about it, take back control from the 3-year-old
Yeah.
and just kind of go, okay. And there's a sense of like acknowledgement and peace
Yeah.
and recognizing that in this human experience,
Yeah.
we're going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
And we're constantly going to be learning along the way. And I think that's the other part in balance that I hear you bringing up, and maybe like we just name it, is that you're talking about this fluidity of giving
Yeah.
ourselves truth, like what's going on for me, and also that grace piece of like, it's just not going to be perfect every day.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I think it's recognizing beauty in the messiness of things.
That's the artist in you, Liz, I think.
Maybe.
Teach us.
I worked for a church for a period of time, and it was, I won't do it again, but it was one of the best experiences I ever had. But people have such a hard time with baptisms because there's so much noise, and yet for me it was like the angels are singing, kind of thing. And so it translates like that for me, that I get to live this life. I get to do this job, that I never thought I would be able to do. Start tearing up here in a little bit, but it is the part of the miracle of life that even as we get older, these new things unfold for us. But they're unfolding because I'm paying attention to my past. I'm paying attention to my needs. I'm paying attention as well as I can to what's happening around me, and continuing to learn from it. And some days I'm going to be flat on my face.
Me too.
And some days I'm just going to be like, man, I didn't even touch the ground today. How did that happen?
I think that's another piece of balance that you really bring up, that you just naturally kind of speak about, is this place of like choosing joy.
Yeah.
I hear you seeking the beauty in sometimes the chaos,
Yeah.
or intentionally making a choice to find joy instead of let the everyday mundane just kind of pass you by, or let the hard
Yeah.
be the only struggle. How do you choose joy in the middle of struggle, and how do you allow struggle to not overtake joy?
It was hard learned, but I grew up in a household where we were raised on fear. We were raised on some paranoia. We were raised on our parents' experience of life, which was really, really hard. And because they were so protective, we didn't get a chance to really spread our wings. And so the minute I could go to college, that's what I did, but I was so unprepared for the world. And I had some really good friends and really, really good counselors. And I don't know, it all converged to be able to help me see the power of the symbol that's out there, and to recognize the beauty, and that even pain has its own beauty and its own culmination. It's like the seed, you know, that gets planted, and then if we're you know, watering it well and processing it, tending it right, then it grows. And as sappy as that sounds, I really believe that.
I think there's a couple things in that. One is that you took a really tough experience.
Yeah.
Right? And you made an active choice to find what were the learning lessons in that for you. Yeah. And you chose at some point to shed any type of bitterness that would have been easy to kind of pull on like a Shaw.
Yeah.
And realize like that just weighs me down, and I don't want to live weighed down. I want to live free.
Yeah. I had a good village. I had a really good village. I couldn't have done this without them, and I needed them, they needed me, and we kind of grew up together, and there's little villages all along the way, and I think we need our tribe. I think we need, you know, an incredible wife who keeps me
big
balanced and centered, and they're just, I think we need each other. I think it's hard for people to find that, but you have to extend yourself a little bit, you know, and push yourself a little bit to do that, and know that there's going to be bumps along the way. But that's part of the balance, you know. You don't want to overextend yourself, but you do want to push it, you know, a little bit.
I hear the other piece in that like lesson of like community is that one, you've mentioned it, that communal learning, right? Learning from observing, how do other people handle this? Like how would they handle it? How might I respond? But also in relationships, we're given opportunities to deal with a variety of different emotions and experiences.
Bump elbows with, I think it was Maya Angelou who said that,
Bump elbows with, love that, right? Learn from all of the things.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that community is also what helped keep you in balance, because in many ways it sounds like the community has been, I think of like a bowling lane, right? And the bumpers on a bowling lane, right? Like if you're like me, who's not an avid bowler, like, you know, your bowling ball might take a few turns, right? But it keeps you from hitting the gutter. And I think that's what I hear about your community and giving that balance is it allows you to have space to kind of push yourself on different edges while also simultaneously creating some support.
Yeah, and I got in the gutter a few times and they helped get me out.
And I think that that's another really great lesson when we think about balance, because when I hear about your lived experience, it was this idea of we can't fail. Because if we get in the gutter, we'll never get back out.
Exactly.
Right? And what you learned in your lived experience is that you might get in the gutter, you might get a little dirty, like, might suck a little bit for a moment, right? But eventually you get back out.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that gave you courageous freedom to take risk and knowing that everything wasn't so black and white or doomsday.
Yeah. Yeah, that takes a lot of reminders that, you know, it really is going to be okay. And if it's not, then I need to find help to help me get there.
Yeah, I love that you bring up that help. And I think of like, you know, you brought up Rebecca, who I love. Your wife is amazing. And you guys balance each other out in so many different ways. And I think of like my husband, right? James tends to be very quiet until you get to know him and then forget it, right? I tend to be very talkative until you get to know me and then I might be a little bit more quiet, right? He tends to be more introverted. I tend to be more extroverted. But there's this gift in learning how to find balance with each other and find that rhythm and that dance. How have you and Rebecca, like, how has that relationship helped you in your clinical practice to have flexibility and routines and then teach that to other people in relationship with people, bumping elbows?
Yeah, she gosh, where do I begin?
We already said she's great, so we got that one off the bat.
Absolutely. Well, you know, she does. She has a very, you know, this is the way you do it kind of thing. This is, you know, she's real good about saying,
Left brain or right brain. Right brain. I keep saying the wrong. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, she's very strong on the left brain too. I mean,
She is. That is true.
but she was the one that helped me get back to school and sort of held my hand through that. So there's lots of support there, and we're really good about that. She's really good at some things, and she knows I'm not so good at them, and she's there for me. And Rebecca's much better at stuff than I am, but I am there to support her, and I have a horrible sense of direction, and her ability to know what the direction is just amazes me.
It's got a built-in internal GPS. Yeah.
But we kind of balance each other out, in that sort of way. That's probably not the best example, but it was the only one I could think of. But I don't know. We've had to learn how to do that. The caring was absolutely there, and it took a little time and a lot of commitment, and we're just in a really good place.
Wow, what a great recipe we're talking about to tell people who are listening. I kind of think of those mug cups of cupcakes, right? What I heard you say is it took care.
Yeah.
Right? So when we're trying to find this balance and we're trying to find this, whether it's with ourselves or with other people, how to be caring to ourselves and to others.
Yeah.
Right? And I hear you saying that was part of it. The other part I heard you say was that concern, just being willing to learn and be curious.
Yeah.
And then I heard you use another one with commitment, that you were super committed to that. And I can just picture this Lizism on some kind of coffee cup mug of how to help find balance really would have those kind of 3 core components.
Yeah.
In that flexibility. Is there anything else you would add to that recipe?
Well, just that we support each other in our individual relationships. I mean, we don't always agree, on certain relationships, but we absolutely do support, and that's so important. I've had people in my life who just got so upset that, I needed to go.
They wanted you to go right. You were going left, and then they were trying to.
And that's been a major thing, I think, for us, certainly for me, because I do have little tribes everywhere just because of my life and what I've done, and those people are still important to me. And she does too. I'm not sure there's not a person in Los Lunas that she's not, connected to in some way. But and we share that with each other, and that's been good.
So I almost hear that final piece of that mug recipe is this sharing of both individuality and self.
Absolutely.
That there's just this sharing component to it. And so I think of we have these mug cakes, right?
Yeah.
But they're not meant for just us to have.
Right.
And so I hear you taking that recipe with Rebecca, how you take that into your clinical practice and you show up with the care and the concern and the curiosity and the commitment, and then you learn from that and then teach them to share, and then share as you progress with the next people on your path. Did I capture that?
Yeah, that's so important. I think so many of us are trying to find connection, and if you can't find it in your therapist's room, where are you going to find it?
Mm-hmm. And I think one is making sure people are reaching out for therapy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? That's so scary and one of so hard.
Best decisions I ever made, and to know that you may not click with a therapist, but you got to give it some time. You have to, it's not like you're coming in and they're going to tell you everything that's wrong. You have to give some of yourself to that, so that they can help, maybe light a way or ask you questions or whatever it is. And sometimes you don't click with a therapist, and it's okay to find someone else.
Yeah, it's this piece of really showing up, and again that being curious, taking a risk to share some of yourself, but also allowing yourself the freedom and flexibility to pace that sharing
Exactly.
at a place that feels tolerable. Not comfortable, but
Yeah.
maybe tolerable.
Yeah. I mean, you can't build trust in an hour. It's going to take a little bit to do.
So let's dissect a couple things that we can leave some of our listeners with.
Okay.
What are some ideas for morning and evening routines that we might tell them, hey, think about this in the morning or in your evening routine? We talked about physical. Anything else that we might add to that for them?
It could be listening to music. It could be reading. I know a lot of people like to read. Audiobooks are great, whether you do that in the morning or the evening. I tend to want to say exercise is probably a better morning option, but everybody's different, right? I'm sure there's obvious things I'm not thinking of, but those are the top, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, some of the things that I kind of resonate with is like, for me, quiet time is really important in the morning, right? That cup of coffee, that experience, like I sit down and I read and I journal a little bit, like that just kind of sets the day, right, for me. That might look different for different people, right? Like it might be like
an end of the day thing.
An end of the day, or
lunch.
It might be like a lunch thing, right? Like my husband is notorious for taking lunch in his car, so he has his introvert time, and I'm just like, oh, lunch? What is that? Like the thing you eat on the way to something? Although I'm trying to slow that down. I also think though of like other people where like sometimes getting ready.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
For some people, like that makeup routine or the hair routine or just first this, then this, then this. Like that ritual part can be a really good way of setting that off, that they're like,
that's true.
I brushed my teeth after I took my shower. That was the wrong order.
It don't feel right.
Something's off today, right? Like some of those things can help set us up.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about some work and productivity routines and the work-life piece that we could give people some maybe lenses to think about? How do they find balance in that routine?
Yeah, for me, I have to get up. It helps that I'm older and I have to go to the bathroom a lot. So, it helps me get my steps in. But I would do that anyway. It's good to get up, peek in, talk to other people. It's almost too hot now, but walk around the building or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of work routines, and I think some of the things that help me is the alarm watches that tell you to stand up, or sometimes they're like, sad face, you have no circles. I'm like, gotta go make a few laps.
Do something.
How many steps do I have? Making sure that we're taking breaks in between and not hyper focusing too long or too much. One of the things I really like is that 2-hour rule, that idea that every 2 hours you should be up and moving for at least a couple minutes. Thank goodness for bathrooms that help us do that every so often, right? Anything else that you might add?
There probably is more, and it's just not coming to mind. I'll do puzzles sometimes at lunch. Or first thing in the morning, I'll do that. I listen to stories sometimes to kind of break up the day a little bit, and then go visit with other staff people. Which is, we've got such a great group and
such a great
lots
team.
of laughing, and that's fun. That's fun to do. I don't know. Do you have?
I was kind of thinking too, like even just taking that step out away from the computer at lunchtime.
Yes, yeah.
Like just actually important. Like sitting to enjoy your meal. Like I joked about it earlier, which is not the way you want to go.
Yeah.
But actually being able to enjoy and digest food and like notice that experience, I think can be really helpful. Definitely an area I'm working on. Not there yet. Not there yet, but trying.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about some of the social and relationship routines and some of the self-care routines. Anything else you might add to that?
No, that there's a difference between connection and trying to please someone because you think, it's going to make you a bigger friend. I did experiential education for a while, and that's the high and low rope stuff. And one of the things that the kids were taught is think of yourself in a circle, and that's your place of safety, and then think of another circle beyond that, and think of one more. And the circle you want to get to is that middle one where you're pushing yourself a little bit and extending yourself to maybe meet a friend, to say hi, and then back away if you need to do that, but don't go beyond that. If you go beyond to that third circle, sometimes it's too far to get back. And some of us have a temptation to overshare, to say too much, to try to be someone we're not. And connection's about finding authenticity, you know.
I think that that's so wise, because I think the other part I hear you saying in that balance is really balancing who we are and letting that our true self be good enough for ourselves and whoever's in our community, and allowing some of those seasons to change too, because not everybody's meant to be in that circle with us forever and always.
Yeah, exactly. Wish I had thought of that.
No, I just took it from you, Liz. I was learning from you and really kind of recognizing that some of us have relationships. And I think that's the other piece maybe that would be helpful for us to tell our listeners, is that balance has seasons.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right? And sometimes balance, we're in a winter season and we're digging our roots down deep, but we actually can't see the growth. Yeah. It's cold, it's hard. There's just not a lot there. Sometimes we're in a spring season and everything's new and blooming and great. Sometimes we're in a fall season where things are falling off and we're just preparing for that change. And so really letting ourselves recognize and have that compassion and that fluidity to recognize the seasons.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have our own cycles that as we get older we recognize, okay, this is my time of maybe not seeing things clearly. I need to, take a deep breath and
this might be a pruning season, this might be a fruitful season. Yeah. Right? And just kind of learning from ourselves, I think. And I think you bring a lot of wisdom in that this idea of balance is not linear.
Yeah.
Right? It's not one dimensional, that it's just about balance within a schedule or balance within a relationship.
Yeah.
It's balance within knowing ourselves and then being able to take that knowing to be in relationship with other people, to allow that knowing to help us know ourselves a little bit deeper.
Absolutely.
And to get to know somebody else a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Anything else you would add for our viewers today, Liz?
There's no one right way. That's it.
Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors, right?
Right.
We all need to bring that variety to the table, because that's really what gives us balance, is that we're allowing ourselves and others around us to be authentic and unique and special in their own right.
Yeah, what I love about artists is they'll make a mistake and they'll incorporate it into their drawing or their picture or whatever.
That.
And I think that's how life is. We make mistakes, we just incorporate it and learn from it and make a pretty picture.
Wow, Liz, that is deep and profound and beautiful, and I think that really sums up what it is to have a full life of balance, is to allow mistakes to be there and also to allow it to create a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And to make sure that we're allowing ourselves and encouraging ourselves to be present in the journey of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Liz, today for your incredible wisdom. You are a talented artist and clinician, human above all things. I have learned so much. I continue to learn so much from you, and I am so grateful for you, Liz.
Thank you.
And Rebecca, our unofficial third party over here.
That's right.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening today to today's episode of TFC Talks. I want to remind you to subscribe and review our podcast. Make sure you share it on all of your social media platforms with your friends and family, so they can all learn about what it's like to have balance, how to have a healthier mental health, and to be part of an incredibly growing and supportive community so that we can change mental health. A last word of encouragement. Until next time, remember that routines are not just about productivity, but they're about creating a balanced and fulfilling life. Really bringing in that picture that Liz talked about, is taking those mistakes and creating a masterpiece throughout the entire journey. So take care of yourself, stay balanced, stay healthy, and be kind to yourself and your neighbor.